The Tragedy of the Century, the Kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's Son. On the night of March 1, 1932, the wind howled madly through the barren trees of the Sourland Hills in New Jersey, as if foreshadowing a nightmare about to descend. At the center of that wilderness stood Highfields, a lonely mansion completely cut off from the outside world. It was the peaceful fortress that Colonel Charles Lindbergh, the greatest American hero of the time, had built to shield his family from the prying eyes of the public. But that evening, the fame he had tried to escape brought a shadow right to the second-floor window. A strange sound broke through the whistling wind. A wooden ladder snapped in two. And when silence returned, the crib of America's little prince was empty. The crime of the century had officially begun, opening a tragic saga that would haunt humanity for nearly 100 years. A stormy night at Highfields. March 1, 1932, a cold, damp Tuesday night in Hopewell, New Jersey. The wind whipped through the bare trees of the Sourland forest, lashing against the isolated house known as Highfields. This was the refuge of the world's most famous couple at the time, Colonel Charles Lindbergh, the lone aviator who had crossed the Atlantic, and his wife, Anne Morrow Lindbergh. They had moved here to escape the flashbulbs of the press, seeking peace for their 20-month-old son, Charles Augustus Lindbergh, Jr., affectionately called Charlie. With his curly blonde hair and bright eyes, the media had dubbed him America's Little Prince. That night, Charlie had a mild cold. Betty Gow, the Scottish nursemaid, rubbed his chest with Vicks, dressed him in a woolen sleeping suit over his pajamas to keep him warm, and at about 8 p.m. placed him in his crib upstairs. She pinned the blankets securely with large safety pins so he couldn't kick them off, left the window slightly ajar for ventilation, but closed the shutters. At 9 p.m., Lindbergh was in his study directly beneath the nursery. He heard a strange sound, a sharp crack like wood breaking or a crate dropping in the kitchen. But the wind was so fierce that night, he assumed it was just branches hitting the roof. He did not check. At 10 p.m., Betty returned to the nursery to check on the child before bed. The room was dark and cold. She approached the crib. Empty. Thinking Anne had taken the baby to her own room, Betty asked, "Madam, did you bring Charlie with you?" Anne was startled. "No, I thought you had him." A chill of terror ran down both women's spines. They rushed to Lindbergh's study. "Colonel, where is the baby?" Betty stammered. Lindbergh leapt up, dashed upstairs, and saw the empty crib. The blankets were still neatly pinned, but the child was gone. The window was wide open, the shutters thrown back. On the sill lay a white envelope. Turning to his wife, his face pale but voice steely, Lindbergh declared, "Anne, they have stolen our child." Clues and chaos. In panic, Lindbergh made a mistake that would haunt the investigation. He ordered no one to touch the envelope until police arrived, but he walked around armed while dozens of people, local police, reporters, trampled the grounds, destroying crucial forensic evidence. Hopewell Police Chief Harry Wolf and later New Jersey State Police Chief Norman Schwarzkopf, father of the famous Gulf War general, arrived at the scene. Outside, beneath the nursery window, they found puzzling evidence. A homemade wooden ladder built in 3 sections that could be joined together, skillfully crafted, but with old wood. One rung had broken, explaining the sound Lindbergh heard at 9 p.m. Footprints, faint impressions in the soft mud, quickly ruined by the crowd. A chisel, likely used to pry open the window. But the most important evidence lay on the windowsill, a ransom note. Inside the envelope was a crumpled sheet of paper scrawled with misspellings. "Dear Sir, Have $50,000 ready, $25,000 in $20 bills, $15,000 in $10 bills, and $10,000 in $5 bills. After 2 to 4 days, we will inform you where to deliver the money. We warn you for making any ding public or for notify the police. The child is in good care. At the bottom was a bizarre symbol, 2 interlocking circles, one red and one blue, pierced by 3 holes, a signature impossible to forge. News spread like wildfire. By morning, the Lindbergh kidnapping dominated headlines worldwide. Thousands of gawkers, journalists, and fraudsters swarmed Opewell, turning the area into a circus and obliterating most remaining evidence. Jafsey and negotiations in the dark. While New Jersey police and the fledgling FBI under J. Edgar Hoover floundered, an eccentric figure emerged. Dr. John F. Condon, a 72-year-old retired Bronx schoolteacher, outraged by the crime, wrote to a local paper offering to act as intermediary and even pledging $1,000 of his own money. Astonishingly, the kidnappers responded, accepting him as betweener. They called him Jafsey, from his initials JFC. Lindbergh, desperate and distrustful of police, agreed. The first meeting took place at night in Woodlawn Cemetery, Bronx. Condon met a man calling himself John, speaking with a heavy German accent, face hidden in the shadows. "Is the baby all right?" Condon asked. "Yes, he is on a boat," John replied. Days later, to prove they held the child, John sent Charlie's sleeping suit. Lindbergh confirmed it was the very garment his son had worn that night. Hope flared. The boy was alive. On April 2, 1932, a month after the kidnapping, Condon carried a box with $50,000 in gold certificates, soon to be withdrawn from circulation, making them traceable, to St. Raymond's Cemetery. Lindbergh waited nearby in his car, hearing the kidnapper's voice call from the darkness, "Hey, doctor, over here!" The money was handed over. In return, John gave Condon a note. "The boy is on a boat called Nellie near the Elizabeth Islands." Lindbergh immediately flew over the area, searching day after day, but no such boat existed. It was a lie. The $50,000 was gone, and Charlie remained missing. The grim truth in the woods. May 12, 1932. 72 days after that fateful night, truck driver William Allen stopped by the roadside about 7 kilometers from Lindbergh's home. Entering a thicket, he noticed something protruding from the leaves, like a discarded doll. Looking closer, he screamed in horror. It was the decomposed body of a child. Police and Lindbergh arrived. From the clothing remains and dental features, the body was identified as Charles Lindbergh, Jr. The autopsy delivered a cruel shock. The child had died the very night of the kidnapping. His skull was severely fractured. Investigators reconstructed the scene. Perhaps when the kidnapper descended the flimsy ladder, the rung broke, the sound Lindbergh heard at 9 p.m., causing the baby to fall, or the kidnapper killed him immediately when he cried. All the negotiations, letters, cemetery meetings, nothing but a ruthless charade to extort money from a desperate father, while his son lay cold in the woods just miles away. America plunged into mourning. Sympathy turned to fury. The public demanded blood. The chase and the gold certificates. The case seemed to have reached a dead end. No fingerprints, no witnesses, apart from Condon's vague description of John. The only clue left was the ransom money. Before the money was handed over, police had recorded the serial numbers of all the bills. Most of the ransom consisted of gold certificates. In 1933, President Roosevelt ordered these withdrawn from circulation to combat the Great Depression. This meant that anyone spending large amounts of gold certificates after 1933 would draw attention. The police waited patiently. They posted lists of the ransom serial numbers in banks and gas stations. Occasionally, a bill surfaced in New York, but the spender could not be traced. The culprit was cautious, spending in tiny amounts. On the morning of September 18, 1934, more than 2 years after the crime, a blue Dodge sedan pulled into a Bronx gas station. The driver bought 5 gallons of gasoline, paying with a $10 gold certificate. Suspicious that the soon-to-be withdrawn bill might be counterfeit, the attendant secretly wrote down the car's license plate number on the edge of the bill, 4U-13-41-NY. When the bill reached the bank, it was identified as part of the ransom. Police traced the license plate. It belonged to a German immigrant carpenter living in the Bronx, Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Silent evidence. On September 19, 1934, police arrested Hauptmann. A search of his home revealed a treasure trove of damning evidence. Ransom money, nearly $14,000 in gold certificates with matching serial numbers hidden in the garage, stuffed into oil cans and behind wallboards. Notebook containing phone numbers and addresses of Dr. Condon. Criminal record. Hauptmann was a former offender in Germany, once using a ladder to break into a mayor's house and rob it. He had entered the U.S. illegally. But the most compelling, almost miraculous evidence came from a wood expert named Arthur Kohler. Kohler spent hundreds of hours studying the wood left at the scene. He traced the wood's origin from a southern mill to a Bronx lumberyard near Hauptmann's home. In Hauptmann's attic, police found a missing floorboard. Kohler proved that the piece of wood used to repair the ladder, rail 16, matched perfectly in grain and nail holes with the remaining attic board. Forensic wood science, xylotomy, shone brilliantly in court for the first time. The ladder became the strongest witness. Hauptmann insisted he was innocent. He claimed the money had been left with him by a friend, Isidor Fisch, before returning to Germany and dying there. He said he spent it believing Fisch owed him money. The press mocked this Fisch story as the Fisch tale. The trial at Flemington. In January 1935, Hauptmann's trial took place in the small town of Flemington, New Jersey. It was dubbed the Trial of the Century. More than 700 reporters crowded the town. Hotels overflowed. Vendors sold miniature souvenir ladders outside the courthouse. Prosecutor David Willents, a gifted orator, painted Hauptmann as a cold, greedy monster. Colonel Lindbergh testified, insisting that the voice he heard in the cemetery, "Hey, doctor," was Hauptmann's. Dr. Condon also identified Hauptmann as John. Handwriting experts confirmed the ransom notes matched Hauptmann's writing, and Arthur Kohler presented his ladder analysis, driving the final nail into the defense's coffin. Defense attorney Edward Riley, hired by a tabloid in exchange for exclusive coverage rights, performed disastrously. He was often drunk, poorly prepared, and spun baseless conspiracy theories, such as accusing nursemaid Betty Gow. Hauptmann sat stone-faced in the dock, denying all charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. On February 13, 1935, the jury declared Bruno Richard Hauptmann guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence, death. The end and the shadows. Hauptmann was imprisoned at Trenton. He refused offers to commute his sentence to life if he confessed. He wrote letters to the governor and his mother, proclaiming his innocence to the end. On April 3, 1936, Hauptmann was executed in the electric chair. He spoke no final words. The current surged through his body at 8:44 p.m. Legally, the case was closed, but its echoes endured. The Lindbergh Law, Congress passed legislation making kidnapping a federal crime of special severity, allowing the FBI to intervene immediately. The Lindbergh family. Unable to bear the scrutiny, Charles and Anne secretly moved to Europe for years before returning to America. The loss of their child scarred them forever. Later, Lindbergh became entangled in political controversies and complex private affairs, including secret families in Germany, tarnishing his heroic image. To this day, conspiracy theories persist. Did Hauptmann act alone? Why did the footprints at the scene seem larger than his? Was he merely a money-keeper accomplice? Or, in a darker speculation, was Lindbergh himself involved in his son's death for eugenic reasons, believing the sickly child unfit? Yet modern forensic reviews overwhelmingly agree Bruno Richard Hauptmann was the culprit. The wood and handwriting evidence could not have been fabricated. The kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's son was not just a criminal case, it marked the end of America's age of innocence, when people could sleep with doors unlocked. It was a tragedy of fame, the cruelty of greed, and a permanent scar in U.S. legal history.